If your hens stopped laying and you can't figure out why, or if you lost a bird last October and never got a real answer, this video is for you. Every fall, backyard flocks across the US, UK, and Canada go through the same 6 mistakes. Not one big disaster, 6 small ones that stack up quietly until you open the coop one morning and something is wrong. None of these are rare or unusual situations. They happen in almost every backyard setup, whether you've got 3 hens or 30, because they're tied to the season itself, not to how experienced you are. I've spent time digging into what actually causes flock crashes in autumn, and none of it is complicated. It's just stuff nobody tells you until it's too late, usually because it doesn't feel urgent in the moment it's happening. So let's go through exactly what's happening in your coop right now, point by point, and what to do about each one before winter locks it in for good. Before we get into it, if you're serious about keeping a healthy backyard flock without guessing your way through every season, hit subscribe. This channel is built for people who want real information, not fluff. Point 1. Your feed is wrong for what your birds are doing right now. Right now, a good chunk of your flock is molting. Feathers are made almost entirely of keratin, and that's roughly 85% protein. Standard layer feed is built for one job: egg production. It sits around 16% protein, which is fine when a hen is just laying. It is not fine when she's also trying to rebuild her entire feather coat from scratch. When she doesn't get enough protein for both jobs, her body prioritizes survival over production. Eggs stop, immune function drops, and a bird that's already stressed from molting becomes an easy target for illness. The fix is simple and doesn't cost much. Switch to a 20 to 22% protein feed during molt, something labeled as grower feed or an all-flock formula. If you don't want to switch your whole feed setup, you can supplement instead. Black oil sunflower seeds are an easy add-in, and scrambled eggs are actually one of the best protein boosts you can give a molting hen, since it's giving her back exactly what her body is trying to produce. Mealworms work the same way if you'd rather buy them dried in bulk. One thing worth knowing is that molt doesn't hit every bird in your flock at the same time or the same speed. Younger hens often molt fast and get it over with in a few weeks. Older hens can drag it out over a month or more, looking rough the whole time. That's normal. What's not normal is a bird that's still bare and patchy well past when the rest of the flock has feathered back out. That's usually a sign she's not getting enough protein to keep up, and it's worth bumping her feed individually if you can separate her out at feeding time. The goal isn't to overfeed the whole flock. It's to match the feed to what each bird's body is actually doing this month, not what it was doing back in July. Point 2. Sealing the coop tight is doing the opposite of what you think. As soon as temperatures drop, the instinct is to seal every gap in the coop. It feels like the responsible thing to do. It's actually one of the fastest ways to hurt your flock. A closed-up coop traps moisture from droppings and from the birds simply breathing overnight. That moisture combines with cold air and causes frostbite on combs, and wattles, which is far more common in sealed coops than in ventilated ones. On top of that, ammonia builds up from the droppings, and ammonia fumes irritate and damage a chicken's respiratory tract, making them more likely to catch something. The fix isn't to leave the coop open to drafts either. It's about where the ventilation happens. You want airflow up high, above where the birds roost, so moist, warm air can escape without blowing directly on the birds while they sleep. Think of it like a chimney effect rather than a window fan. Keep the area right around the roost draft-free, but let the top of the coop breathe. A simple way to check if you've got this right is to walk into the coop first thing in the morning before you've opened anything up. If it smells strongly of ammonia or feels noticeably damp, your ventilation isn't doing its job no matter how insulated the walls are. Vents near the roofline, gaps under the eaves, or a small cupola on top all work for this. You're not trying to cool the coop down. Chickens handle cold far better than they handle damp. That one adjustment, moving airflow up and out, instead of sealing everything shut, prevents most of the frostbite and respiratory issues. Point 3. Fall predators are not the same threat as summer predators. A lot of keepers relax on predator proofing once the summer threats seem to calm down. October is actually one of the most dangerous months of the year for a flock. Young predators that were born in spring are now old enough to be pushed out on their own and are actively looking for easy food sources. Natural food in the wild gets scarcer as the season shifts, which pushes predators toward backyard coops. On top of that, hawks are migrating through in the fall, and an open-top run is an easy target during the day. Standard chicken wire was never built to stop a determined raccoon, and fall is exactly when raccoons get determined. Standard chicken wire was never built to stop a determined raccoon, and fall is exactly when raccoons get determined. Burying it matters just as much as the wire itself. It should go at least 12 inches deep around the perimeter, or be bent outward at the base and extended as a dig-proof skirt, since most predators go under a barrier before they try to go through it. If your run doesn't have a top cover, add one, even if it's just netting or additional hardware cloth, to deal with the hawk problem during the day. A few minutes checking your fence line for gaps, loose seams, or spots where the wire has pulled away from the posts can save you from losing birds you've raised for years. Point 4. Waiting to see if a sick bird gets better is a mistake. Chickens are prey animals, and prey animals hide weakness as a survival instinct. By the time a bird is visibly sick, whatever she has likely been building for a while. She may already be shedding contagious material to the rest of the flock. The instinct to wait and see if she bounces back feels reasonable, but it gives respiratory diseases like infectious bronchitis or coryza time to spread through the whole coop. The fix is to have a hospital set up ready before you need it, not after. A simple wire dog crate in a garage or shed works fine, with its own food and water, so you're not making extra trips back to the main coop. The moment a bird looks off, whether it's discharge from the eyes or nose, lethargy, sitting apart from the flock, or just not acting like herself, she goes into that pen the same day. You're not trying to diagnose her instantly. You're buying time to observe her. This matters more in fall than any other season, because cooler, damper air is exactly when respiratory illnesses spread fastest through a coop. A single untreated case can move through an entire flock within days if the sick bird stays in with everyone else. Having the crate set up in advance means you're not scrambling to find one at 9 p.m. when you notice something's wrong. Speed matters more than certainty here. You can always let her back out once she's clearly improved. Point 5. Frozen water is a slower problem than people realize. Chickens drink 2 to 3 times more water by weight than they eat and feed. That ratio matters because when water freezes overnight, egg production can stop for weeks. Dehydration hits egg laying hard, and it's one of the most common, most preventable reasons flocks go from productive to silent heading into winter. There are a few solid ways to handle this depending on your setup. A thermostatically controlled heated waterer base is the most reliable option if you already have electricity out to the coop, since it only kicks on when the temperature actually drops low enough to freeze, which keeps your power costs down. Rubber bowls are a cheaper fix if you don't have power out there, since ice forms in a flexible shape you can just pop out by bending the bowl, rather than having to chip at a hard plastic container every morning. Heated bucket nipple systems work well too if you're already using a nipple-based watering setup, and they tend to stay cleaner than open bowls since birds can't step or defecate in them. Whatever method you choose, check it twice a day. Point 6. Carrying non-productive birds into winter costs you more than it seems. This one is less about health and more about running your backyard flock like it's actually worth running. Older hens still eat just as much as your productive birds. October is a good time to do a real flock audit before winter costs lock in. Check pelvic bone width by feeling either side of the vent, since laying hens have wider spacing there to allow for egg passage, while non-layers feel tight. Check vent moisture too, since active layers tend to have a moist, wide, pale vent from regular egg laying compared to a dry, tight, yellowish vent on a bird that stopped producing. Neither check takes more than a few seconds per bird. From there, decide honestly which birds are earning their keep and which ones aren't. This isn't about being cold about it. Some keepers rehome older hens to people who just want pets, which works well if you're in an area with an active homesteading community. None of these 6 mistakes are complicated on their own. The problem is that they're easy to overlook because none of them feel urgent in the moment. Feed looks fine, the coop feels warmer, sealed up, the wire looks intact. The sick bird looks like she might just be having an off day. Water freezes and you figure you'll deal with it later. And that older hen has been part of the flock for years, so culling her feels harsh. But stacked together, these turn a healthy flock into a struggling one. Go through your setup this week. Check your feed, check your ventilation, check your fencing, have a hospital pen ready, sort out your water situation, and be honest about which birds are actually productive. If this helped, subscribe for more real, no-fluff backyard farming content, and let me know in the comments which one of these 6 you're dealing with right now.